The name's Ian Edwards. I'm a partner for the company, so I look after commercials and acquisitions. It's just one of the biggest markets, so if you take into account just pure scale, it's an incredible market in terms of also, it's a challenging market to get into. So the ability to actually build an office there, to build a representation, to build footprint, barrier to entry is quite high because it's quite a sophisticated market. So you need obviously your regulatory passing and your exams there. You also need a certain amount of experience. And the clients are also very sophisticated themselves. So when you talk about being able to build it into an opportunity, there's only a handful of companies that are actually active in the US itself. So from that perspective, for the AMA, it's a really, really good market. I mean, to give you an idea of scale, there's over 800,000 British expats alone that are living and working in the US. Maybe contract, maybe full-time, maybe taking their green cards. And if you just take into account the scale, which a lot of people actually don't know, but something like California, New York, and Texas, it actually has a bigger GDP than Russia. California is actually double the GDP of Russia. So 3 states alone basically are the size of a country, if you take into account that. Texas is where we've set up offices. The reason being is that it's within Houston, so one of the 4th largest, biggest cities in the US, direct flights out, but cost of living is good. But if you take into account Texas, it actually could be its own standalone state based on its size, its economics, and all that it brings, which again is something of interest. Is if it were a country, it would be the 9th biggest country in the world. So that's something to be able to take into account of just the pure scale of the US. So I would define it as pretty much an environment which is focused on support, training, and probably one of the most important parts is consolidation of all the years of experience. If you take into account, Greg being the founding senior partner with over 30 years in international financial services, I've got over a decade, John Holland's got over a decade, Nick is pretty much around close on a decade worth of experience. So the consolidation of that would be probably one of the cultures, and being able to relay that back to our team. So the advisors do have the flexibility to choose what they want and what's best for the client. Comparatively, many companies have a set list of funds that you can use or require you to place certain investments or clients in certain positions. But for us, it's really about what's best for the client and looking at a very wide array of tools that are available to them. So for me, that's very important. I would also say that the experience, again, that comes with the team. It's not often about the company name, it's about the people that actually run the business. So you've got a hugely experienced team between the partners, senior partners, founding senior partners, that you can look at across very different skill sets, regulatory, sales, even just general financial services. If you look at the founding partner, Greg Morris, those are very critical reasons that I would look at it. I would also then look at, from the US perspective, I am very slanted or prone towards that, but within the US, it is only a handful of advisory firms like ourselves. As I mentioned, with a high barrier to entry, they do more look at the international market, where we are holistic. So we do the US domestic market, we do the international side. We've got great relationships with recognized tax firms, legal firms. So we do provide that holistic service, which on the US front is a very important requirement for the clients. So it provides us with the ability to support them, to then also be able to ring fence our clients. But at the same time, because it's a sophisticated market, we have the ability to be able to offer them a much broader range of tools and services. So for someone joining the US market and looking at those offices, you get the ability to have a much broader range and probably a quicker ability to build a presence there for yourself, which when you've got boots on the ground, it's important to be able to assist everybody on multiple levels. Is the ability to listen. There's great value in being able to be teachable. There's always something to learn, and I think you can always learn from others. So, even the conversations I may have with some of the junior team members, they've got great ideas, they've got something that can add value. So listening is probably the first one. Remain humble is pretty much a close second. It's an industry filled with peaks and troughs. The peaks are high and the troughs are very, very low. So you need to also remain consistent in terms of understanding that you probably as good as your last win. but also that, you know, when the times are running well, to again just remember who and how you got to where you did. I think is an important part of also focusing on the client needs. You know, you both can benefit, but if you put the client first, they need to see you as a confidant. They need to be able to come to you with questions. They need to be able to ask you matters that you may not have an influence over. Examples, I've helped a client in the past with a query on a mortgage. We can't assist, but you know, having relationships with private banks, you can be able to question, query, but they will still be able to come to you. So in years to come, you want to be able to know you've given them the best advice. They feel that they've got value from you. So I think it's an important part. I would definitely say you need to remain upskilling yourself. You know, if there's one thing that I've taken away from having opened up the US arm, if I hadn't continued my education, if I hadn't continued my regulatory frameworks, it would have been pretty tough, and I would have been behind the path on that perspective. So for me, that's where I think it's important. And last one is with anything, work harder, but I don't think it doesn't come without working smarter than the person next to you. One of the mottos that I live by is actually being the hardest working person in my sphere, I'd like to say, because ultimately this is an industry which you can, just by working hard, will get you a certain place, but by working smarter, you'll be able to start to find a simple means of process, and you can then replicate, and ultimately you can work smarter if you don't have the hard parts. You know, it's an important combination between the two. So those are the attributes that I would look for in anybody, or recommend for anybody that's on the financial advisory space. I've always had an interest in sports. So I actually worked and supported an ex-professional footballer called Andre Aronsa. I assisted him in terms of creating his goalkeeping school, and he's now working within the national levels. But what that led me towards was I had the opportunity within the sporting arena and the Laureate Sport for Good to actually climb Kilimanjaro with Martina Navratilova. So it was part of her breast cancer awareness and fundraiser. So there was a couple of very well-known sport people that were actually on the climb. It was an incredible climb to be on the top of Africa, but also to be able to speak to and rub shoulders with some of the even Paralympic gold champions from a cycling perspective. So that's probably something someone didn't know about me.